much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers, folks. It is Wheelin Fridays to get your Q&A in. Laura will grab it out of the comment and shoot it over to me, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. But look, I want to spend most of today going over the Republican Nomination Delegate Map. There will be a Democrat one, too. But the states are still doing what they're trying to do. The parties are still trying to do what they're trying to do. So it does take time to get this information. I strongly suggest looking at this map, revisiting the map, the new one, by the way, if you have the link to the new one. We're not going to update the old one. It's too damn small. The new one is just a weird kind of flaw with this. You got to make a new one to get it bigger. And once you change the setting. But I would look at it at least once a day because it's constantly being amended. It's constantly being updated, and it's constantly being just stuff being added to it, including complex delegate allocation rules, right? So this very confusing stuff to most people, and I can make it very, very simple, or at least as simple as possible for just about everybody. All right, so you can get a much better grip on how this stuff is done. And there's always a feeling that there's something shadowy going on behind the scenes during a nomination. The truth is, it's much more difficult for that to happen on the Republican side. Democrat side, not so much. You can create an app, let's say, get Hillary Clinton's people to create an app in Iowa that misallocates or makes it very easy to cover up intentionally misallocating state delegate equivalents so you can screw over Bernie Sanders and make it look like Pete Buttigieg actually won the Iowa caucus. Take the wind out of Bernie's sails going into New Hampshire so he gets a slight victory instead of the trouncing one everyone expected him to get. So for the second time, Bernie got bent over and he took it. And they have superdelegates. The truth is, Republicans do have a few superdelegates. They just don't have them the way Democrats have them, right? And especially when we're looking at some of these territorial caucuses, they're very weird. Some states, Republicans have outright conventions. There's weird, what are called loophole primaries in Pennsylvania, for instance, and one other state. But it's really not, once you go over it in pretty good detail, it's really not that complicated, or at least most of it isn't, and we can get a pretty good grip on it. And the map gives you a very good idea about where really all these delegate-rich areas are. So, for instance, the Harris X poll that just came out, it shows that in the South, there's a couple Southern candidates in there. There's Nikki Haley, there's Tim Scott, and of course, there's the second highest vote getter, although they're all low-tier candidates. That's the truth. No matter how much money has been spent in Iowa and New Hampshire, Paul Bedard, Washington Examiner really just put it very, very well. Just plain and blunt, and it's factual. It's the truth. Despite all the money, despite all the endorsements from state electeds, which I have to tell you, read the party rules. This was a pretty important book, when I was coming up. It doesn't have the power it used to have, but the bottom line is, psephology, nobody looks back and says that, statewide elected and local elected leaders, their endorsements carry much weight. That's not the norm. What carries weight is congressional and gubernatorial endorsements, when they do carry weight. And in that token, Trump is way ahead. Way ahead. So all this money that has been spent and Ron DeSantis has fallen in both Iowa and New Hampshire. And that is exacerbated by the indictment, no doubt. But for the fact of the matter is, he was falling. He was falling to begin with. All right, so what does this mean? These delegate rules matter. In some of these states, I did one yesterday on Twitter, just like a food for thought. In that New Hampshire poll, Ron DeSantis is at risk of not earning a single delegate. Chris Christie he's within the sampling era. Maybe he would get one, maybe he wouldn't. But if you look at the delegate rules in New Hampshire, Trump is basically going to winner take all that puppy at this point. South Carolina is a winner take most, but how dominant he is across all the congressional districts, it's a winner take all. He did it in 2016. He became the first candidate to make South Carolina a winner take all state. Not by virtue of the rules, but by virtue of how dominant his support was. And if that maintains, it's time we start to look at the cold hard facts about even if Trump was to weaken, how difficult it would be if you don't knock out his 50-point lead in the state of New York, his 55-point lead in this 50-point lead in the state of New Jersey, his 55-point lead in the state of New York, his 45-some point lead in the state of Massachusetts, his now 30-plus point lead in the state of California, which has the most delegates, by the way. And in Texas, which has the second most. And again, like I said on Wednesday, I don't really care what other polls show. I know the state of Florida better than anybody. Nobody has polled it as accurately as I have in primaries and in generals. So maybe that will change in the future at some point. But forgive me if I put my own data, I give it more weight than anyone else. It's winner take all, even if I'm marginally wrong. My hint is a poll that had DeSantis, my hunch is a poll that had DeSantis up 45 points when Emerson had Trump up by 3, and I had it basically a tied race. That now shows it a tied race is probably wrong against my Trump plus roughly 20. All right. So it's a winner take all, third most delegates. The math is getting unlikely. Which, and by the way, everyone knows this, which is why certain anti-Trump forces, like Ken Cuccinelli, for instance, are lobbying for rule changes before they're set. They wanted superdelegates 6 months ago. Superdelegates like Democrats. So why? If they don't like your vote, they can just have a bunch of unbound, unpledged delegates that can vote for whomever they want. And again, the minutiae of these rules we're going to go into. Then there's the matter of Trump's. I'm going to wait to see. Look, I just got it from the source here, but did I get the most recent one? They're checking it for me to give me the exact amount, but it crossed the 7%. So I had written Trump raises $7 million before because that's what he had raised when I was prepping for the show on Thursday. He's above that now post indictment. It's important because one of the plans in this lawfare strategy is to exhaust his funds. And then they know they have more money than small dollar donors. And Trump has always been, he has always been a small dollar, what we call a low dollar donor candidate. And the vast majority of his money comes from people who make comes from people who contribute under about $200, $250 if you really use the RNC kind of framing. Anyway, so he will need these kind of fundraising hauls because they are most definitely going to use lawfare to try to keep him off the campaign trail, try to keep him out of fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I want to talk before I tee this up, though, and I'm going to wait to hear back. I'm sure we will hear back pretty soon about the more solid number. I want to look at some of the more recent polls that have come out before we look at the map. All right. And I'm going to try to crunch all this in. If you can keep your questions kind of directed to the content, that would be great. I mean, I'll try to answer any question, but if you can keep it relevant to the content, that would be awesome because then I can try to answer it as we go through. But look, this just came out today and it comes literally on the heels of one yesterday. All right. So let's put it up. And by the way, I'm waiting for Emerson to come out. They should be coming out with New Hampshire and Florida pretty soon. Why? Because they're a mixed mode poll. We're getting a lot of live interview polls out today. And when you're talking about a presidential election, we've been over this a million times. When we're talking about a presidential election, live caller is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. You're going to miss working class, true working class. You're going to miss low propensity that do vote and will vote if somebody like Trump is on the ballot, you're going to miss a ton of voters. It's not exactly a secret that I've been a proponent of mixed mode for years now because, Rich, how'd you do that in 2016? How'd you do that? Because polling needs to evolve. And in larger population sizes that you're targeting for survey, you cannot limit yourself to a single mode because different people, or maybe we should say for the purpose of alliteration, different demographics respond to different modes at different rates. All right, so, and here's a new, let's go over this quick. And I want to actually read you something that's separate from this, but you can click on it right here if you want to. I'll put the link out in a second, and you can click on it if you want to get the crosstabs out of it. But yeah, there's always guitars here. Always guitars. I saw you come. Yeah, well, I'm a Sweetwater fan. What can I tell you? They're not an advertiser. I'm just a big fan of Sweetwater. I like to buy stuff normally from, directly, but Sweetwater has great warranties. Anyway, former President Donald Trump remains the prohibitive favorite to win the New Hampshire GOP presidential primary. While his most vocal opponents tops the list of candidates, Granite State Republicans say they will never support. Those are the findings of the latest New Hampshire Journal coefficient poll. It surveyed more than 900 New Hampshire Republican primary voters on June 14th to 16, days after news broke of Trump's indictment on federal criminal charges. Let me just stop real quick and say there, I can tell you it's not just other polls. I see it myself. Essentially, every Republican voter has heard of the indictment at this point. All right. And the vast majority of them, mass majority, think that this is political nonsense. And by the way, no, it's not political nonsense. They believe it's political persecution and a pivotal moment in our country's history. That's a better framing of this. In the survey, which is a margin of error of 3.2%, likely GOP primary voters were asked for their views on the indictments. Only 23% said Trump is guilty and deserves to be punished, while 35% said they believe Trump had done nothing wrong. The remaining 42% of plurality said they weren't sure if he broke the law, but they believe he is only being prosecuted because he is Donald Trump. That's a big deal going on what Barnes and I have been trying to say about this idea that some of these voters that Trump is just totally dominant with, they are disconnected from society. They are people who feel like generally that this, that they are always being attacked in some manner, shape, or form. Non-white voters, this is New Hampshire, it's very white, but in other states, non-white voters who as a white guy, I can't tell you exactly how they feel, but understand their experience is different and they're relating to a billionaire older white guy. Ask how the indictments impacted their vote in the presidential primary. 42% said it made them more likely to support Trump. 43% said it had no impact. Only 15% said they were less likely to vote for him. So it doesn't really matter what this 23% said, because some people actually believe even if he's guilty, they would vote for him. You understand what that means? 8% out of the 23% would still vote for the guy, would consider voting for him. I just want to read this because I want to get some really dumb political commentary in here and then remind everybody of some really good political commentary. And by the way, I got to thank somebody for doing that. Hold on one second. Let me get that up and ready because Ultra Darth. Thank you for sending that over. Laura grabbed it, snagged it up, and I was like, there's a clip. There's that clip I was talking about. Anyway. Quote, it's hard not to notice that 75% of the Republican electorate in New Hampshire is either committed to or at least open to voting for Trump, even after these federal charges, said Coefficient CEO Ryan Muntz. Okay, you understand what that means? Plus or minus 3.5%. The man ceiling is 80%. At least. Close to it. Ballpark. And this is not you know what? I don't want to jump ahead here. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but for those of you who have, the map in front of you, we classified this as a semi-closed primary. But why? Because, and we're going to talk more about these definitions. The truth is, it's really not a semi-closed primary as in the way you may be thinking. We're going to define these terms. It means it's not closed where only Republicans can vote. Other voters can vote as long as they are registered unaffiliated. All right. So if you're like a Green Party or Libertarian, or there's several in New Hampshire, then you cannot participate in the primary of your choice. If you are unaffiliated or previously unaffiliated, there's even some weird rules with that. You can still vote in the primary that you are of your choice. And if you're, of course, a party member, you vote in that primary. All right. But generally speaking, as long as you are registered as a two-party person, you can vote in one of the parties, or if you are an unaffiliated voter. All right. That's why we're calling that semi-closed, because it's not really fully open to everyone else. And then like Colorado is something like semi-open. But we'll get into all that. I don't want to jump too far ahead. All right. So getting back to it. Trump still enjoys the approval of 60% of Granite State Republicans, while 29% view him unfavorably. That compares to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis's 46 to 33. This is a guy who had, in head-to-head matchup, let me just get this out. Trump leads DeSantis 49 to 23 with 28% undecided. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Ron DeSantis is he's going to get all 28% and eke out Trump. I mean, this is getting ridiculous, Laura. It's getting ridiculous to entertain this stuff now. It truly is. I cannot. And all things can change in politics, but it's only going to change if a mass social bias and mass fear campaign works that they launch against the American voter. I'm not going to participate in it. I'm going to be the one who's going to be straight up with you and tell you that yes, even this early, this is, like IBD Tip said earlier this week, this is not statistically surmountable. It's not. Match Trump against a field of major competitors, and his margin over DeSantis is even larger. With Trump at 47, DeSantis at 13, Christie at 9, and former Vice President Mike Pence, 5%. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and businessman Vivek Ramaswamy and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott are tied at 3%. Trump continues to show strength and invulnerability in the Republican primary field as he leads his closest challenger by 34%, Munn said. Okay, again, I have to keep repeating some of these things. Trump never had this strength in 2015 and 2016. Never. Never. Even when he was the front runner and it was getting to be close to calling him the presumptive nominee, he was never this strong. Christie garnered praise from pundits and this is important to know. Christie had a good trip to New Hampshire because the media wanted him to have a good trip. Christie garnered praise from pundits and media personalities for his blunt, direct attacks on Trump. But that hasn't generated a surge in support in the Granite State. Well, I don't know that that's true. He's definitely got a bump. He's threatening to surpass Ron DeSantis at this point. In fact, when asked to name the candidates they would never vote for under any circumstance, Christie topped the list, named by 46% of respondents. Pence was on the never support list with 40%. Trump at 26, Haley at 25, DeSantis at 20. All right. Yeah, but the truth is, he can still surpass Ron DeSantis with 46 or whatever, 46% of respondents saying that they would never vote for him. All right, so moving on here. We're going to get to the delegate rules in a second because it's important. And the poll that was out yesterday, by the way, had DeSantis and Christie. This one's not much better. Truth be told, what was Christie again here? 8? I mean, it's not much better. The truth is. Okay, so wait, I'm going to give away the card here. So how did Trump challengers make progress if attacking Trump has no impact on his support but drives their numbers down? Okay, get ready for some really dumb commentary. It's tough. It's an uphill climb, like taking on Mount Everest. That ends the intelligent response. Here comes the stupid. But it can be done, said veteran GOP strategist Dave Carney. Remember, with Biden bailing on the Democratic primary, you could have as many as 100,000 true independents, unaffiliated voters voting in the Republican primary. I think there will be a lot of fresh blood. Okay, here's the problem with that. And I've heard this from a lot of DeSantis. He is a DeSantis person. Let's cut the crap. And I've heard this from a lot of DeSantis people. Here's the problem. You're losing independence. Where is this? It's like you can't break through to them with reality. Even in California, we thought it's so much more moderate, so much more liberal. Now Trump's pretty much in a majority with every category. Because there are other things that are offsetting it. And independents are not going to be, let's say, 50% to offset the margin that Trump is winning Republicans by. The truth is, whether it's Mike Pence's political people, Ron DeSantis' political people, Chris Christie's political people, you've all heard them make a very critical error. A majority of the party wants to move on from Donald Trump. Mark Mitchell at Rasmussen yesterday did a video in which you could clearly hear the frustration in his voice. Him, myself, many other pollsters have flatly said to them, that is not true. You are parroting a falsehood because you're trying to construct. You're trying to be constructive instead of instructive. You understand what I mean by that? They're trying to create a reality instead of recognizing a reality. You know that meme guy, Dilly, the other day, somebody sent me, and it was yesterday, earlier this morning. Yes, sent me something a clip from him, and he had said that, the inability to course correct is a major problem. And because you just make one bad decision after another, and eventually you just end up in a giant hole from which you cannot dig yourself out of. That is 100% correct. And I've said the same thing in a variation of ways numerous times. There have been many bad decisions based on flawed assumptions, and the anti-Trump candidates refuse to course correct. And just by listening to this person, which I'm going to read you more to right here, they just don't get it. Someone's got to come up with a strategy to knock out some of the competitors. The Iowa caucuses will help with that. And the right way to target Trump, it won't be easy. But if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. Wow, that's really insightful. Except Donald Trump is above 50 in the state of Iowa. So that's the end of that. He's almost above 50 in New Hampshire. He is above 50 basically everywhere else. So I don't know what math you learned. Who taught you basic arithmetic? Others were less optimistic about a future Trump-free GOP ticket. I look at this race and I don't see a race at all. There is no Republican primary, said Matt Continetti, conservative journalist and author of The History of Conservatism, entitled The Right. Maybe DeSantis could turn this into a primary over the next 6 months, but it's just getting ridiculous, Continetti said on Thursday's Commentary Magazine podcast. You have Trump over 50%. He raised $7 million since his indictment, and even his rivals have come to his defense after he's arraigned for withholding classified documents. Now, see, here's the catch-22. If you take the advice of an idiot like Ben Dominic, and you actually start piling on and attacking him like Mike Pence did on the Buck Sexton show. Well, it was really the Rush Limbaugh show. Now that Buck Sexton and Clay Travis have that spot, you get even a reaction. Listen, we all know those two were sitting at the DeSantis fundraiser. We all know they're DeSantis people, yet they were not going to sit there and listen to Mike Pence talk about how the rule of law is so coveted and how we have to abide by it. And don't we believe in our justice system and the judicial process? And no! Americans don't believe in it. So you go to criticize them and you turn people away anyway. And then you violate this rule.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified, that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
In the decades of Rush Limbaugh's career, has the GOP consultant class ever been smarter than him? Or more insightful? Is there any social media influencer right now that you could point to that has ever been more in touch with the right, the American right, and more correct than Rush Limbaugh? If you answer yes to that, you're an arrogant and ignorant person who probably has not followed his career very well at all. There is no one out there who can figure out how to beat Donald Trump without violating the Rush Limbaugh rule. The Limbaugh theorem on Trump, whatever you want to call it. They have been unable to do it. A couple of days ago, I was on Twitter just kind of poking fun at people because I think it's rather obvious. And yet, every time these attempts happen, they go right down the Scott Walker path. They go right down the Marco Rubio path. They go right down the Ted Cruz path. And do you know why it is that they do that? Because they're all recycling the same failed consultants who ran those campaigns. Continetti is right as a matter of statistics. This is getting ridiculous. Rick Santorum won the Iowa caucuses, and everyone continued with the inevitability narrative surrounding Mitt Romney and the electability narrative that you now hear from Team DeSantis, even though most of, not all, but most of the consensus of polling shows that he is in fact the weaker candidate against Joe Biden, and he is. And if people want to bring up the Epic MRA poll today that came out of Michigan, I'll just tell you this right now. They got 22 right. That's probably because of the mode. They didn't get it great, but they got it right. But they're doing something that doesn't reflect reality. They're forcing all voters to choose when that's not how the real world works. At least with the Marquette poll, they did give people the choice. Here's the head-to-head, no choice. Here's the real ballot. With a choice for third party, with a choice not to vote. That's the real ballot. And you didn't get that today. In others where you do get it, you can see it so clearly. It jumps right out at you. Trump has always given more to the GOP than the GOP has given to Trump. It's why the Jeb Bush polls look better for against Hillary Clinton. It looked, Jeb Bush looked better, Marco Rubio looked better, even hell, Ted Cruz looked better against Donald Trump in 2015 and 2016. And yet it was absolutely a ridiculous proposition to suggest that either of those candidates would have done better than Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. And here's another part. Republicans don't believe it. Let me get to what Carney says real quick. Carney said he believes that if Trump wins Iowa and New Hampshire, the primary is over and he'll be the nominee. And Carney added, he's got the media helping him because the only question the press asks is Trump's competitors is what about Trump? It's all about Trump. Additionally, yeah, I'm sure the media is helping Trump. Yeah, okay. Additionally, based on this poll, making the electability argument isn't likely to help Trump's opponent. And this goes to what I was saying before. A plurality, 43%, said Trump is the only Republican who can beat Biden and turn out the Republican base, while just 24% said Trump will lose to Biden and hurt the party down ticket. This is deja vu, ladies and gentlemen. Deja vu. Nobody believes the narrative, the electability narrative. Why? Probably because he's the only president, Republican nominee in decades. Decades. And I just got word, by the way. I'll tell you in a second. To win these states. Laura, that's bleeding through, babe. Okay? Whoa, hey, there's a little booger in here. Anyway, let me just say real quick, I just got word that it will be over. Let me just make sure I'm right about this. All right. Yes. The fundraising haul for Donald Trump post-indictment will exceed 8 million today. So that was, less than 24 hours that it went from 7 to 8? Less than 24? All right. So let's get to the delegate map and discuss this in more detail. Let's go to New Hampshire. Then we're going to look at some of the other polls. There was a poll in New Hampshire yesterday as well, which was frankly even worse for the non-Trump candidates. And let's get into some delegate rules. All right. And as we do this, I hope to just kind of explain some of the terminology on the map. There are several things outlined on this map. All right. The map below compares estimated delegates counts by state. Clicking on each state provides more information about allocation, contest type, and specific rules. All right, so you're going to get the date. Some of them are estimated, and some of them are not officially on the books, but we know that that will be the case. I'm telling you, it's been a lot of work to get this map going. And again, the green papers are a great source. I linked to them below. They were quite helpful in areas where we just could not burn the phones and get information. All right. You know why? Because I'll tell you what, when there was no other, 5-turd fakes out there, and the green papers have been around a long time. They do very hard work. Trust me, I know. Pouring through party rules is a pain in the butt to give you a product that makes it feasible to understand. All right. So I know they know what they're doing. And I trust them more than say and I love Ballotpedia, but I trust them more than say like a Ballotpedia or even Politico or even Fox News or any of the others. All right. So if you see, for instance, or let me just give you this, there's the dates and everything is subject to change because things can still change. States are in the process of that. You're not going to see major changes, but there are some things that will in fact change. And maybe the specific date, this Tuesday, it's not Tuesday the 9th, it's Tuesday the 16th or something. Maybe something like that changes, but that's it. All right, so when you look at a state, let's go to the granite state, for instance. All right, click on it, and it will freeze the tooltip. You're going to see the date. You're going to see the delegates, how many delegates there are. And on the table, it says total delegates, but I was shorting this stuff so people can't get clustered, you know what. How allocation is how those delegates are allocated. There are a few different terms, and we'll go over them. Proportional, which New Hampshire is fairly self-explanatory. There's something called rounding rules. We're going to go over that in much more greater detail. Many states, whether primary or caucuses, they have different rules for how they proportionately allocate delegates, and we did try to give you specific equations when we knew that they were final and done. And then even explain rounding rules. Some states have different rounding rules. Like North Carolina, for instance, has a different rounding rule than, say, Michigan or something. And Michigan's like winner take most. It's supposedly winner take all, but you're going to look at a state like Michigan and you're going to say to yourself, I can't believe that's how delegates are allocated. I know some states are crazy, but it's how it's done. All right, so New Hampshire is proportional. Of course, then there's winner take all. We're using winner take all, winner take most. There is still some that are labeled hybrid because I'm not sure that gives a very good explanation. There's a loophole primary, such as in the state of Pennsylvania, where it's technically considered a winner take all. But like, what is it? The either Guam or American Samoa. I'd have to look and see and refresh my memory, but Hawaii does it. There you elect, it's like a beauty contest, what used to be called a beauty contest. You elect not the candidate, or primary voters don't vote for the candidate. They vote for the delegates that are going to be bound to that candidate. All right. So candidates in some cases, like territorial caucuses, have to submit a slate of those delegates. So caucus goers or primary voters know who those delegates are. It's a total pain in the butt. I feel bad for people who live in states like Pennsylvania. But you know, this is just the way it is. All right, so this one is proportional. It is a semi-closed primary. Like I explained to you before, a lot of people saying New Hampshire is just like, oh, it's an open primary. It's more accurate to say it's a semi-closed primary. All right, meaning voters generally must be registered a party member, but an unaffiliated voter can participate. If you're a Green Party or third party of any kind, you cannot. All right, contest rules or the delegate rules are as follows. Now, keep the polling in mind as I read these. All 22 of the Granite States delegates to the Republican National Convention are bound to the candidate based on the results of the primary. Candidates must meet a 10% threshold of the statewide vote to qualify to even earn delegates. So far, there is only one candidate who is safely within or above the threshold. It is very feasible that only Donald Trump gets any delegates if this continues. If threshold is met, vote share is calculated in proportion to the total statewide. Multiply each candidate's percentage by 22 and then round to the nearest whole number. If delegates remain, they are awarded to the winner of the statewide vote. Sometimes when rounding happens, and this can happen, this state like this, if when you are done doing the calculations, you are over delegates, all right, meaning there's an excess, or no, excuse me, I should say that there's a deficit. You don't have as many delegates. There's a whole bunch of people who made it to the 10% threshold. So it's like each are getting like 1 or 2 delegates and the leader gets the majority, but then you end up with like 23 delegates. The candidate who is at the bottom vote getting, I'm talking about, that is qualified to receive a delegate will lose a delegate, or the delegates necessary to make it go to 22, but it's never way off the beaten path. Again, so it's extremely it's possible. It's worse than when you look at the poll and it says Trump 49, DeSantis 10 or 12, Christie 8, everybody else 3 is 7, whatever. It means Trump is going to take the vast majority of those delegates. It's not really as close as you think, and it becomes extremely difficult to catch up. Let's look at a state like California. We just looked at the Emerson poll and the PPIC poll earlier this week. Comes on the back of when we did the last public polling project and we got an oversized sample in California. It was, and I'll get you that number right now, but it makes sense to me because if I want to say it was like Trump 48, DeSantis, I don't even know, like 15 or 14. So it makes sense to me to see the numbers that we're now seeing from others. And with Emerson, let me give you Emerson's, it was right here. I had it right handy just for this when we did this. Okay, they have DeSantis at 19, Mike Pence at 10, Trump at 53. Now, there is a threshold, but here's the kicker. And we've talked about this before, that there is in fact a little effort to try to use the crazy rules of California with district allocation to catch up if they're behind badly in the delegate race. Primary will be held on Super Tuesday, March 5th. 169 delegates. It's allocated as a winner take most. We categorize it as a winner take most. It is it's type closed primary. I actually thought that it's closed. Yep. I just wanted to make sure that was correct. Only registered party members may participate. If a candidate earns a majority of the statewide vote, as Trump is polling at right now, congressional and at-large delegates are awarded on a winner-take-all basis. If no candidate receives a majority of the statewide vote, then delegates are awarded proportionately. A 20% threshold for the statewide vote is required to qualify for delegates. Here's the problem with that plan. It's Super Tuesday. More often than not, there are still several candidates on the ballot, even if they drop out. Now, if delegates are awarded and a candidate drops out, they can be unbound, and an establishment can play games. That's important to note. But it's still in a crowded field. Could increase the likelihood that a bunch of candidates fall below that 20% threshold, and even in fact that Trump takes a majority where he is now. And then what happens to all 169 delegates? Let's go to Texas. And I'm trying to pick different states where there are different things. Texas, also Tuesday, March 5th, the second most delegates available in the Republican primary, 162. Winner take most. It's an open primary. All registered voters may participate in the primary. All 162 delegates are bound, including 114 district delegates, 3 per district, and 48 at-large statewide delegates. Majority district leads receive all 3 delegates. If candidates win or lead with a plurality, and more than one meets the 20% threshold, the leader receives 2 delegates, and second place receives 1. As of right now, hitting that 20% threshold in the state of Texas, nobody's doing it but Trump. In certain districts, without a doubt, somebody's going to hit that threshold, even if the polls look the way they do the day we go into March 5th. If no candidate receives or meets the 20% threshold, the top 3 vote getters each receive a delegate. If a winning candidate earns a majority of the vote statewide, they earn all 48 at-large statewide delegates, majority delegates. If no candidate receives a statewide majority, delegates are awarded proportionately to all candidates who meet the 20% threshold. That becomes a statewide threshold using rounding rules. Okay. Let me I know it's like a little bit crazy, a little bit unclear to some people, but every state is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, let me look at some of the, give me 2 seconds. And hand this RCP. Let's go to Republican primary. I mean, we didn't even have it close, folks. We had it like 60 to 12 or something. I have to go back and look. Where's my Texas poll? Where is my Texas poll? Come on, Texas. Come on, Texas. Yeah, I'm wondering why. I'm telling you, Google is doing this to Real Clear Politics. I know they've been under a lot of heat lately. Like, the left wants them gone because they're objective or the most objective in the industry still. They are they are the OG of all of this. They are the original gangsta in all of this. And so, if they could get rid of Real Clear Politics, it would be huge. Here we go. So here's Texas. Our poll in Texas was Trump, 60.2, Ron DeSantis, 17. All other candidates combined, 18, with less than 4%, but 4% rounded, undecided. Rounding may not equal 100. Oh, no. Total results may not equal 100 due to rounding. There's a disclaimer. Everyone does. So what does that mean? It means that at this point, I mean, again, it's time to explain what this polling means to me. It means at this point that it is unclear whether any other candidate would qualify for any of the 162 delegates in the state of Texas. Could there be a more, let's say, moderate area where they think that they'll be able to pull that off and do better and hit these thresholds? Sure, I guess. There could be some districts here and there where it happens. When I polled the 12th district, that was one of the more moderate but yet Republican districts in the state of Texas. And DeSantis was at like 23%. So he would qualify for at least one of those delegates, but Trump would take two. All right. So, oh, no, wait a minute. No, he wouldn't. Never mind. Let me just make sure I'm right about this. Yeah, never mind. It doesn't matter that DeSantis is at 20 because Trump is above 50. He's at 53. So he would take all three delegates in that district as well. That's what this means. And of course, he wins the majority. He's above 50, so he's taking all 48 at-large statewide delegates. And a lot of people are always like, what are those extra three in every state? The Republican Party gives their leaders an extra delegates. Okay, so what's a good state to use? Well, let's go to Texas, and I'll explain it to you at Texas. Basically every rule is like this. Okay, there is. Yeah, they're bound unless something was to happen. So, where is it? I'm trying to look for literally in the rules. Okay. I could have swore there was an actual the three-party leaders, the national committeeman, the national committee woman, and the chairman of the Texas Republican Party will attend a convention as pledged delegates by virtue of their position. So they're just most states have this. It's an additional three. If it's a winner take most, it's coming from, let's say, something like this. In Texas, for instance, 114 districts have 3 delegates apiece. All right. So, 114 district delegates, excuse me, for 3 per congressional district. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. There are 48 at-large delegates statewide. 10 is the base at-large delegate count plus 35, quote, bonus delegates, and 3 RNC delegates. And that RNC delegate is what I was talking about. The bonus delegates, unless something clear, most of the time, almost all the time, they are bound by the rules and pledged to that candidate. So again, in a Republican primary, it is much, much, much more difficult to pull shenanigans like Democrats can very, very easily do. Let's look at New York. Actually, let's look at New Jersey, where Trump has a 50-point lead. Okay, because I mean, it's Rich, it's New Jersey. Look at how small this tooltip is. Very simple. There are 49 delegates, winner take all. It's a semi-closed primary. You know what that means by now. All 49 delegates are bound to the results of the primary and awarded on a winner-take-all basis. No threshold. No threshold. All right. Florida, the governor's home state. Well, one that the president now is doing as well. Fairly small tooltip. After Super Tuesday, by the way, people think like states just kind of things occur in a vacuum in primaries and in nomination battles. There are people out there that keep making these comments that are ridiculous. This stuff doesn't occur in a vacuum. What happens in New Hampshire and in South Carolina, and then on Super Tuesday, Texas and California is going to matter for subsequent states. Does it matter that Florida is the governor's home state? If he gets crushed on the way to Florida, he'll get crushed in Florida. He's getting crushed there right now. 125 delegates awarded on a winner-take-all basis in a closed primary, which is a massive problem because it's only Republicans. Massive problem for non-Trumpers. Trump is by far the strongest with registered Republicans. Only registered party members may participate in the primary. All 125 delegates, again, are bound and allocated to the winner of the statewide vote, including the three-party leader delegates. No threshold. Let's look at New York, where Trump has right now a 50-something point lead. I don't even know. It's like 60 to something to 8. April 2nd, 91 delegates. Winner take most. It is a closed primary. Only registered party members may participate. Again, when we're talking about nominations, we're always thinking about lanes. Who is the strongest in the closed primary lane? 78 district delegates are bound to the candidate based on the primary results in each of the state's 27 congressional districts. And of course, do some quick math. If a candidate receives more than 50% or one candidate meets the 20% threshold, that candidate receives all 3 delegates. Currently, in every single congressional district in the state of New York, that is the case right now. No candidate other than Trump, it's the 20% threshold. None. Not a single one. If at least 2 candidates receive at least 20%, the leader receives 2 delegates and second place receives 1 delegate. All right. And that, by the way, has to be the case. That's only matters if nobody hits that majority. So let's say there are 3 candidates by the time you get to New York. Trump gets 51% in these districts, and candidate B gets 20%, and candidate C gets another 20%. And now we're into the 90s, and then maybe there are a few other candidates who are just there, and their names are on the ballot. Maybe they're not even really in the race anymore, but they get a couple of votes, blah, 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 but they don't meet the threshold. So it's not like delegates eventually will become unbound, and you can play with them at the convention because they don't meet the threshold. Those delegates anyway won't, it doesn't matter that the other 2 candidates hit the 20%. It doesn't matter because he hit the majority and he's going to take all 3 delegates per district. I'm going through, obviously, the states with some pretty significant delegates. North Carolina is an interesting one. Winner take most, 75 delegates on Super Tuesday. It's a semi-closed primary. Voters generally may be registered as a party in order to participate in that party's primary, but previously unaffiliated and unaffiliated can participate in the primary of their choice. There are different ballots for different primaries. So if you're a Republican, you have to ask for the Republican ballot, just like in Florida. The only difference is in North Carolina, an unaffiliated, not third party, an unaffiliated voter could say, hey, I want to vote in the Republican primary. We've seen these kind of crazy polls before. We just saw them in 2022. There was the polling universe that included me and others like Emerson. And then there was the polling universe that included some of these other ones that, I'm not going to just keep bashing people. I mean, you know how I feel. I feel like some people are right and some people are wrong. And I think Kentucky pretty much proved who's in the real universe and who is not. And even, in fact, those who were closer to the real universe most definitely underestimated the MAGA vote in Kentucky. That happened in North Carolina in 2022. And all Ted Budd did against Pat McCrory, and Laura can attest to this, she's sitting right next to me. Hi, I'm Ted Budd, and I approve this message. I'm a loyal supporter of Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump endorsed me, not Pat McCrory. I'm going to get elected, and I'm going to help stop inflation, but I'm going to pave the way for Trump's next presidency. 40-point blowout. Carrie to every single county except for Mecklenburg in that area. And he barely lost it. I'd have to go look. It was like 26 votes the last time I looked. Barely lost it. You have Carteret, Craven, Hyde. The Western ancestral Democrats that now vote Republican, they have shifted their allegiance, either Republican or unaffiliated, and they will vote in the Republican primary. Northeastern North Carolina. There are pockets where Trump would underperform as of today. But he's clearly... I mean, we've been down this road before. McCrory was never ahead. Was it close at some point? Yeah, it was close. Closer. But at the end of the day, when people go to make their decision, North Carolina Republicans are extremely MAGA. Extremely. Maybe not all the electeds, but I got to tell you, the legislature fights like hell more than most. Speaking of which, you may have seen the article in Politico where Democrats are asking liberal state Supreme Courts. This is what happens when Dan Kelly decides to run the shittiest campaign known to North Carolina, known to Wisconsin Supreme Court politics. Runs from Donald Trump, gets his ass kicked in lumberjack country, can't even hold on to Kenosha, underperforms in Waukesha and Brown, where Green Bay is, loses Sauk, gets crushed in Dorr, Rusk Polk, typical Mitt Romney, worse than Mitt Romney performance. Now they lost to court, and Democrats are asking this new liberal court with Karofsky and the rest of the Stalinites to overturn the map and give them another seat or two in New York. Listen, you can hate them for it all you want if you're Republicans out there. Mark, I couldn't even stand to be 10 feet away from the guy. He was such a slime ball. I felt like I had to take a shower when I left the courtroom. But they know what they're doing, and the system favors them because it's liberal. Their arguments, frankly, suck. But it doesn't matter because they've used shitty arguments in judge shop courts to build legal precedent. So now they want the New York Supreme Court to give them 6 more districts, 6 more seats in the state of New York. So North Carolina, with your super majorities now and your new conservative majority, you should go back, since everyone knows that Eastern North Carolina was undercounted. You should go back, and you can override the governor's veto. You could do whatever you want. You should ask the new conservative court to review the lawless decision by the last court to overturn the map that was agreed upon by Governor Cooper and Senate legislative Democrats when they played chicken with the state budget over expansion of Medicaid and lost because Cooper's own party bailed on him when the generic ballot started to get real ugly for them. By the way, Florida and some parts of Texas, and really Texas was not good, but Florida is not the only place where Republicans had a good night in 2022. They underperformed everywhere except for Florida and North Carolina. Here are the party rules for North Carolina. All 75 delegates are bound to the result of the primary. 42 district delegates are to be allocated according to one candidate, accordingly, it should say. I'm sorry. Are to be allocated accordingly. And here's the rule. If one candidate receives more than 2/3 of the vote, I'm getting a little cross-eyed, 2/3 of the vote, or only one qualifies for the 20% threshold, said candidate receives all 3 delegates. If not, the highest vote getter receives 2, and the second highest vote getter receives 1. If no candidate meets the 20% threshold, which is not going to happen, but it's in the delegate rules, the top 3 vote getters each receive 1 delegate. 33 statewide at-large delegates are distributed proportionately to candidates who meet the 20% threshold statewide. Rounding rules, however, are not yet known. All right, so even if there was an outperformance in North Carolina, it would have to be an extremely strong outperformance to make up some of the delegates that are going to get racked up on March 5th. Ladies and gentlemen, let me read you everything that's occurring on March 5th so far, as we know it. Alaska presidential preference poll. And we can go over that, actually, because Alaska's freaking weird. Proportional closed primary caucus convention. It's a hybrid. Only registered party members may participate in the primary poll conducted by the party at the caucus and convention setting. All 28 delegates are bound based on the results. Candidates must receive 13% of the total statewide vote in order to earn delegates, which are allocated proportionately. Round down from 0.49% and up from 0.5%. If rounding results in too many delegates, subtract the excess delegates from the candidate entitled to delegates who receive the fewest votes. If rounding results in a too few delegates, add the additional delegates to the candidate who received the most votes. All right. So again, we're only talking about 28 delegates. Crazy proportional rule. Even if someone else was favored, you're not going to get a big leap. All right. We also have Arkansas, where Trump is heavily favored. All right. Alabama, Arkansas. Where are you? There you go. I got a brain fart for a second. It's winner take most. It's an open primary, but Trump is dominant here. All registered voters may participate. All 40 delegates are bound based on the result of the primary. 12 district delegates are allocated based on district-wide result, 3 per district. If a candidate receives, oh, what happened here? Let me get, I'll read it to you. For some reason, it's cut off. But give me a second. Let me go to my table and I'll read it for you. If a candidate receives a majority of the vote, that candidate is allocated all three district delegates. If no candidate receives a majority, the one with a plurality is allocated 2 delegates, and the next highest gets 1 delegate. 28 at-large statewide delegates, which are 10 really at-large, 15 bonus, and 3 RNC, are to be allocated to the presidential contenders based on the statewide primary results. Each presidential candidate receiving 15% of the statewide vote is allocated 1 delegate. If a candidate receives a majority of the statewide vote, they get the remaining at-large delegates. Does anyone seriously think the South is not going to go significantly for Donald Trump? If no candidate receives a majority, the remaining at-large delegates are proportionately allocated among those who meet the 15% threshold. Round fractions to the nearest whole number. If too many delegates are allocated, same thing. You know how if there comes out that there are more, they exceed the 40 that Arkansas has to the convention, then you will take away the delegate from the lowest qualified candidate vote getter. All right, because they got to meet that threshold. If there are too few, then the remaining delegate or delegates will be added to the top vote getter. But none of this really matters if somebody hits 50%. None of it really matters. There are only 4 congressional districts in Arkansas. If you win like 60% of the vote, you're probably going to hit in every single one. What else is that day, folks? Tennessee, Alabama. We just went over California. I'm going to go over Colorado in a second, but Massachusetts, where Trump has a 45-point lead. We just went over. Maine, forget about it. North Carolina, we just went over. Oklahoma's one where Ron DeSantis may be able to make some kind of a play because it's very, very, very weird. It's a winner-take-most closed primary. Only registered party members may participate. Listen to these rules. All 43 delegates, and by the way, Governor Stitt endorsed Ron DeSantis. This is a man who literally called to beg for Trump's endorsement in 22. Trump gave it to him and stabbed him in the back, right? So that's just what Trump's dealing with. However, the rules are funky. All 43 delegates are typically, in parentheses, bound to the results of the primary. 15 district delegates, 3 of each, are allocated accordingly. If one candidate earns more than 50% of the vote, or one candidate only one meets the 15% threshold, all 3 delegates are awarded. If 2 candidates meet the 15% threshold, with no majority candidate receiving the most votes is awarded. With no majority, the candidate receiving the most votes will get 2, and the second runner-up will get 1. If 3 or more meet the threshold, the top 3 vote getters are awarded 1 delegate. If one candidate earns more than 50% of the statewide vote, the 28 at-large delegates are awarded on a winner-take-all basis. Otherwise, the 28 at-large delegates are proportionally allocated to the candidate who meets the 15% threshold. Any remaining delegates are unbound. And Oklahoma has a bunch of really crazy rules to unbind those delegates. All right. So that may make some sense to some of you as we go on. All right. But what else is that day? Neighboring Texas. We just went over that. Virginia, where Trump isn't a huge lead. Let's go over the rules there. Vermont, that will be Trump. What else is there? Maine, we already said, right? Alaska, we went over. Minnesota, right? Which most likely will be Trump. Tuesday would be a very, very, very big night for the former president, assuming the polls are what they are now. Let's go over Virginia. Also, some weirdo rules. It's a proportional state. 48 delegates total up for grabs. It's an open primary. Virginia does not. Why? Virginia does not have, as you well know, declared party registration. All 48 delegates are bound based on the primary results. For each candidate, delegates are allocated proportionately as follows. Multiply 48 by the number of votes a candidate received. Divide by the total primary vote that had been cast. Then round to the nearest whole number. If the results are below 48, the candidate closest to the rounding threshold receives a delegate. If the results exceed 48, the candidate further from the rounding threshold loses a delegate. So the threshold has to deal with rounding and allocation here. It does not have to deal with overall share of a district or the state level vote. Okay. Strange rules, weird, but it does make it very difficult. If you romp the vote anyway, then that really won't much matter because it's just the way the math works. You're going to take most of them proportionally anyway. All right. But we'll see. Utah would be, I think it was last poll was like Trump +1. Utah can very much conceivably be a place. Idaho, another one, but only Utah is available on Super Tuesday. But Utah, we don't know the rules fully yet. I mean, I could read them to you. They are a little bit weird. Well, we do know them. It's just that it's very strange. There are 40 at-large delegates overall, but they are bound. If a candidate receives a majority, that candidate is allocated all 40. It is a winner-take-most, but it's a closed primary, and it's a closed primary, by the way. If 3 or more delegates or candidates receive 15% or more of the vote, then the delegates are proportionally allocated to those who meet that 15% threshold. And see the round, it's the same rounding rules, by the way. If fewer than 3 candidates receive 15%, hit that threshold, then the delegates are proportionally allocated between all candidates. I know. Weird, right? Here's how you do it in the state of Utah. You start with the candidate who gets the most votes. Multiply the percentage of the votes that they receive. So let's say they got 45. You multiply 45 by the total number of delegates available and round any remainder up to the next whole number. Repeat for the next highest vote getter until you go down and all the 40 delegates, have been allocated. So again, it is a nice state with a lot of, a chunk of delegates in a state like Utah. And a lot of people say, why the hell is that? How does this state get that many delegates when it's so small like that? Listen, this has been an issue that's been debated for a very, very long time over delegate allocation, who gets what. They'll tell you, like, for instance, we went over it on Wednesday. They'll tell you, and it is true, that the census happens, things change, population, American Community Survey, things change. But obviously, it isn't proportionately accurate that Utah and Massachusetts have roughly the same delegates. It's just not. What's Massachusetts, by the way? 40. No, they have the same exact. Yeah. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're saying, well, Utah's a red state. I want them to have more of a say. And that's the other side of that argument. All right. So that is Super Tuesday in a nutshell. Michigan is did we go over Michigan? I'm sorry. I'm just been burning through this. Yeah, there will be. I saw the comment, by the way. There will be another censure vote. It does appear that Anna has worked out some of Massey and Molinaro's concerns. You know what? It's 1:15. Let's do a commercial. And when we come back, we will we'll go over some of your questions because, man, Laura threw a lot in there. Whole lot. And I hope you guys cannot hear my son screaming bloody hell, but he is. So he's just being fun and silly, but he's like, let's go. You know, like how people write let's go on like social media. He does that personally. It's crazy. All right. Listen, folks, authorities fear that extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid. That's according to Time magazine, not me or Breitbart. And if 9 key subsidies, just 9, went down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. Everyone's life would be frozen in time at the moment the power went out. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, even your fridge. Right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and get one for 10% off using the promo code TPP10 at checkout. Again, it's TPP10 at checkout. This code is for your first purchase only, so make it count. That's 4patriots.com. Use the code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. And of course, I want to tell you real quick before you get back about this great deal from our friends at Jam and Bean, Patriot-owned, delicious coffee, talented coffee roasters, and by the way, their popcorn is amazing. If you go right now to Jam and Bean, JAMN Bean.com, and you sign up for a new subscription, you will get 40% off right off the jump using the promo code TPP40 at checkout. And get this, you will still get 10% off every month on your subsequent renewals just for being a People's Pundit watcher, listener, etc. Again, jamandbean.com, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. And send me your feedback. Send me your feedback. All right, I'd love to see it. All right, let's get through some of these questions here. Ooh, there's some big ones here. John, disgusting. And John, I mean, just disgusting. This is why, and I don't know if you saw John O'Shea was on Wednesday. He blew up on social media because he just went after Kay Granger. He's like, this is a disgrace to the 12th district. She was one of the Republicans who voted against censuring Adam Schiff. And let me just read what John says. What are your thoughts on Congress RINOs voting for spending orgies and letting Schiff get off? Will they all be primaried? So tired of uniparty RINOs stabbing us in the back. Time for a third party? Well, I'll tell you this, John. I mean, if you are in Texas 12, you have an option. You could vote for John O'Shea. If you are in, let's see, there's several of them. I mean, Massey would be difficult to beat. He's not going to be primary. But as and Molinaro is a good guy. I got to tell you, Mark Molinaro is, look, he's New York, right? So, you know, he's not going to be a MAGA bomb thrower. But I can tell you that Mark is a nice guy, all right? Or at least he's always been nice to me. And he's always been thoughtful. And, you know, we've had thoughtful exchanges, honest exchanges. And I believe Mark when he says, I have a couple constitutional concerns here. You know, now that should have, been discussed earlier, I feel. And I'm not sure because listen, you know, if you listen to Anna says, yeah, I address these concerns. I mean, I don't know what more explicit, why they need this amended, because I made it explicitly clear. I think in the case of Molinaro, he needs to look like he's doing his due diligence and that he does have some additional concerns. So it's just like, it's a win for him to do that. Massey, often I just feel like he's a grandstander. He has made some of the dumbest comments to me on Twitter. They don't even make any sense. I mean, stay in your lane, Thomas. Stay in your lane. I don't teach you, right? Isn't he a doctor or something? I don't teach you how to freaking close heart valves, all right? Like, or blow them up with a stent or something. I don't know what you do. I don't teach you how to do that. I don't appreciate you trying to pretend like you know my business, because you don't. You live in a state where you can do whatever you want and pretty much no one's going to primary you and you can just go on about your business, all right? We're going to see, though, John, whether or not the Republican Party survives this. I don't think people understand how at risk the Republican Party is right now. Because of these votes, they're perfect examples, John, of why the Republican Party hates its leaders and hates like every time we poll on favorability, on leadership, the only one that Republicans particularly seem to like is Donald Trump. You know, they hate all other national leaders, all other national figures for the most part. And Democrats circle the wagons. Ted Cruz is right when he says, like, we could uncover Joe Biden killing somebody to cover up, you know, something his son did, or we could, it doesn't matter. Senate Democrats are never voting to convict Joe Biden in impeachment. You're not going to get breakaways like you saw Republicans do because they're cowards or they're corrupt when it came to Trump's impeachment. And that's got to change if the Republican Party wants to persist as a national political force. If it doesn't, start lying. Because the deal is not like they're caving or they're just liars. They're lying to their voters to begin with. And if it doesn't stop, they will end up fractured. And that will be the end of it. You know, so YT on YouTube. I don't know who it is, but somebody says, Quinnipiac poll showing Biden ahead. What do you make of it? Listen, Quinnipiac did okay in 2022. Again, you'll find that you can get away with live caller only in a midterm election. I still personally don't like it. We went through and found that just a different mix of a mode would have helped in some places, but generally we still polled very well. What happened was on the ground issue with Republicans, and I don't think that Quinnipiac is going to perform any better this year or next year in the presidential election, or even in these primaries if they choose to poll them. They're just not. All right. So, and if they do, then great, more power to them. But I'm not going to give them any credence over my own numbers because they called 1 out of 5 last elections somewhat decently. You know what I mean? I'm just not. Let's rewind to the last presidential election. They had Joe Biden carrying the state of Ohio by 5 points until 24 hours later. They basically amended the same data set and pretended like it was a new poll and amended it to Biden +4. They, along with the New York Times, by the way, they did too, had Biden up in Ohio. They had Biden ahead by a point in Iowa. They had Biden ahead by 6 points in Florida. I mean, do we have to go down this list? I'm just not going to entertain it. It's bad. The record is terrible. So just because they had one recent decent election does not mean their overall record is well. And again, I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but some of their methodology has some problems, and in my mind, and I don't want to dive in. It would be a whole other episode, but they have amended some stuff, but unfortunately, they still really have a lot of problems, and that they would not get away with in a midterm, but they're not going to get away with it in a Republican in a presidential election if they don't change them. All right, let me put this back up here about some. Oh. You know, do I project that the GOP surge Trump is getting via the indictment will extend in the general election? Well, Wong, all I can say right now, and I think I understand what you mean by that, but all I can say right now is that at this point, there's no deterioration at all for Trump in the national polling. There's just none in his position against Joe Biden. Do I project that will continue? You know what? At this point, I do, because it's not just Republicans. Look at the independents in these primaries. Independents will participate more in the Republican primary than the Democratic primary. It's just a fact. We have that estimated right now based on polling, but also that's typically the case when there's an incumbent and he doesn't have. At this point, RFK is not a huge, serious challenge. They're going to screw RFK anyway, folks. That's why I can't get you a Democratic nomination map right now. They're still busy fudging it to screw RFK. And they're going to front load all of Joe Biden's best states, including South Carolina, and expensive ones where it's difficult to compete. So that will force, there's going to be more excitement. There is more excitement around this Republican primary than there is the Democratic primary. So I'm not seeing it only among Republicans, and I'm not seeing deterioration among independents either. There has been, look at the polls that have been conducted after the indictment, the CBS poll, the Emerson poll. And we have not seen anything to suggest that independents are somehow bleeding and running towards another candidate or saying, no, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump in the general election. I mean, it's some of this stuff I watch on Twitter where he can't win with independents. In the vast majority of polls, he's ahead with independents. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Vivek and Trump are the only ones I hear looking for peace in Ukraine rather than defeating Russia, whatever that means. How will that play with GOP primary voters, and how does it position Vivek to capture some of the weak support of other candidates and undecideds? Well, I will tell you, Vivek is positioning himself very well for fall-off candidates to suck up some of that support. However, he does... he needs something to catch a little bit more fire. Like, he bumped a little bit and then he held. But the truth is, he's not that far away from, like Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. There's a sampling era, so in truth, Vivek could be at 7 or 8 and DeSantis could be at 8 and Christie could be at 4 or 12. I mean, it's a 4% sampling error. It goes 4% either way. So, I don't think we yet know that. But the war in Ukraine is extremely unpopular with Republican primary voters. Extremely. They hate it. They think we're prosecuting a war or threatening to get us into World War III or a great power conflict to protect the Biden crime family and their financial interests. So Nikki Haley is never going to convince the Republican voters that a win in Ukraine is a win for us. No, it's a win for you. It's a win for Joe Biden. It's a win for the crooked energy companies they set up there that they gave our money to, that they took bribes from. Ron DeSantis, because he's got an aide who worked for a George Soros-funded foundation who aided in Ukraine and refuses to acknowledge that the 2014 overthrow of the government was a coup, is never going to convince the Republican primary voter that her position is correct. Republicans are done with war. They're done. It's a major, major issue. And the truth is, the missteps from somebody like DeSantis trying to play both sides of the fence, Vivek has always been much more consistent. DeSantis made missteps at a time when voters were really focused on him. And I don't know how you undo that. Would it be difficult to review 2016 delegates and see when Trump actually passed the 50% mark? You mean the 50% of delegates, or do you mean the 50% of in polling? Because Noble, can you answer that? And Laura, can you grab that for me? Because I'm not sure. The truth is, Trump really never hit 50% in the 2016 Republican primary when it counted. He just didn't. It was really over by then. But if you mean by delegates, he clinched it, for real clinched it, in Indiana. I mean, it wasn't over yet, but that's when Ted Cruz even acknowledged that was a wrap. It was over. And he was on his way to clinch it. Oh, by the way, delegates have changed since then. There are 1,234 delegates are needed to there are 2,467 total, but 1,234 are needed to clinch the nomination. All right. Yeah, Trump never hit 50 until the very, very end, until January, February, March, April of that year when the Indiana primary persisted. That's when it was over. All right. And the very last poll was a CNN ORC poll that had Trump at 49 and Cruz at 25. But Trump's average was still in the 40s. Pew Research had Trump 44, Cruz 25. USA Today had Trump 45, Cruz 29. This is nowhere near what it looked like. And here, I'll just show you the trend. Let me stop sharing my map and I'll show you. It's a really good question because it's a point I've been trying to make to people for a long time. he was never this strong, and yet he steamrolled them all anyway. I mean, folks, this is 2016. He's still at 35%. 35%. And that was like he was just as the turn of the new year on Christmas, right after Christmas, 3 days after Christmas, right before the new year, 3 days after, and 3 days before the new year, Trump's at 36%, 36.5%, and he hits an all-time high. It's not until after Indiana in May that Trump even approaches getting close to 50. But, when he was racking it and killing it, he was still in the 30s. He had hit a previous high of 43 in March 23rd. He fell again. Cruz was surging. Look, I mean, folks, by freaking, even on March 16th, it was only Trump plus 6. That's it. And by the way, look at how Kasich was at 17.5, basically where DeSantis is now. Rubio at 19, basically where DeSantis is now. And look at how many delegates they got, because those are the delegate rules. Look at now, Harris X, Trump 53, DeSantis 17. Nobody's even close. You had candidates already in the double digits from the jump of this thing, basically. Cruz even overtook him at one point. I mean, folks, this is crazy. This is crazy. It is not remotely comparable to what we're dealing with now. I answered those already. Should Trump campaign hard in southern Milwaukee, the more working class areas, Olmsted, all that. Southeastern. I'm sorry. I was thinking about. I saw the M and I was thinking Minnesota, southern Milwaukee. Yeah, Trump does better in urban areas than other Republicans. Oh my God, brain fart. He does. He does his best in rural and urban areas, which is a pretty damn good coalition to have if you're trying to win a Republican nomination. Because despite the fact that there are, urban areas or Democratic areas, there's still a lot of votes there. And then, of course, the rural vote, it's very hard to win. If you can win most, let's say, insurgent candidates and their candidacies, like Rick Santorum, they would try to put together this coalition of like rural voters and then hopefully convince the suburbs to go their way, because the RINOs would win the urban areas. And even though they weren't, racking up that kind of a vote that we see now in urban areas. And then really what the RINOs would do was pluck off the suburbs and use that with the urban areas to overtake the rural. If you're a Republican candidate and you can somehow appeal, and by the way, Trump is ahead in the burbs, so that's important to note. It's just closer. If you can appeal to the urban vote and crush it with the rural vote, and even just at least compete with the suburban vote, you're going to rock the nomination. Rock it. Nobody's done it before, except for Donald Trump. He did it in 2016, but he did it with a plurality. Right now, what we're seeing are majorities. It could be an even more devastating defeat than what Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Jeb Bush had to endure. Now, again, this is why they're trying to use political lawfare. They want to keep him off the trail. They want to stop him from being able to raise money. They want to bleed him dry of money and resources. They want to impoverish this guy and then put him in prison. As of this moment, I am extremely, extremely reluctant to believe that Republican voters are going to get scared and allow that to happen. I've seen the bravery of Republican voters. It's been a beautiful thing to watch at some points in my career. The way they came out and defended their president in Florida and in key states with Senate races because they knew the House would impeach him. The way they posted the largest vote ever for the incumbent president. And even before all that, the way they ignored Fox News, who was supposed to have their back, and sought to betray them and interfere in their election. No better than the FBI. And pick the nominee they want anyway. If Republicans, the majority of Republicans, were to buckle now, it would be uncharacteristic of them. So do I think he should campaign in the working class areas of southern Milwaukee? Absolutely. I think you're going to start to see some of that stuff. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you that I do know, that they are aware of that potential secret weapon. When are the deadlines for primary rule changes, and does the party have the stomach to change them to screw Trump over, which would be obvious to voters? It would be, Pete. Oh, my God. Pete. Oh, my God. That would be it. It'd be like a Democratic convention from the 60s. It'd be like something Hubert Humphrey walks out of. It'd be a shit show. And it would crack the party in half. The deadlines are different all over the place. Oh, in Nevada, I needed to bring this up real quick, and this will be an example to answer your question, Pete. So in Nevada, 26 delegates, they're allocated proportionately. Trump is heavily favored to win here. The governor before, Sisolak, signed a law moving it to a primary and not a caucus. Republicans are arguing in court that they have a right as a party to conduct the contest of their choice. So they're suing right now. So as of right now, it is closed regardless. As of right now, those are the rules we have up. But if it stands, all 26 delegates are bound and a 4% threshold exists. However, pending lawsuit, it is unclear whether Republicans will hold a caucus or a primary and how even proportionate delegates will be allocated. So, I mean, we could just wind up using traditional rounding rules. What's the total vote cast? Multiply the total vote for the top vote getter by the number of delegates, round, blah, blah, blah. We don't know. We just don't know yet. I could come out with something crazy altogether. There are states like Michigan where they'll hold these closed conventions and they will have some crazy thing. Look at Michigan. It's winner take most. There are these at-large delegates, right? But then later, the caucus will conduct a presidential preference poll to allocate another 39 district delegates. But all of this can be changed by the RNC adopting a single rule that says any candidate under indictment, delegates can be unbound. I mean, they could pull some crap like that. What Cuccinelli and others wanted was either a rule like that or unbound delegates that can save the party from the stupidity of their voters if they had the audacity to elect somebody who was under federal indictment. Would be obvious, Pete. And it would result in the biggest political screw-up of all time. As a Texas 12 resident, I've despised Kay Granger for years. Do you think her vote to not censure Adam Schiff confirms that her strategy to beat John O'Shea is to try and take the moderate lane and appeal to the upper-crust country club Republicans instead of fool voters in the district that she's a true conservative MAGA type? That's a really good question. That's from Locals, WC Lice. Very good question. The last time she had to face a primary challenge that was real was in 2020. He wound up getting over 40% of the vote anyway, even though Trump gave Kay Granger his support. And she was not MAGA. The challenger was. But he needed her support in case impeachment, right? Because he knew what was going to happen. So he gave Kay Granger support. something tells me they may try. Don't be surprised if Kay doesn't run and they put, I know who it is too, and I don't want to say it yet. But they put somebody else in there that's a Kay Granger acolyte who is known in your area right now, but because it's such a local post, people aren't familiar yet with the agenda this person has supported. And I assure you, John is fully ready and capable to expose that. It's just, that it's not there yet. So there's no reason to do it until that, threat to him exists. But I'm not sure she's going to run at all. I know that, so far that's the word, but I don't know. I know she was afraid when John sat down with her and told her at lunch, I'm going to run against you, Kay. I can tell you flat out she was afraid. And by the way, yeah, I'm saying this. The Jeff Rowe consultant class crew advised John, because they wanted John's campaign. He did not give it to them. Advised John not to even have the courtesy to sit down and have a conversation with her. Basic decency, folks. Basic decency. Locals from Dan. A question I'd offer would be, how much primary polls outside the early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, maybe South Carolina, and Nevada, really tell us? Wouldn't the results from the early contest completely reshape or confirm the results based on momentum? Not sure of the history here. Dan, you are 100% correct. That's why I am, at this point, absolutely, positively not going to waste my money on anything after March 5th. No way. No shape. No how. Wisconsin, everybody wants to play this little game with Wisconsin because they think, DeSantis or some other non-Trump candidate's going to be doing better there, even though the last polling was down. And by the way, the Wisconsin rules we should go over because Trump was at like 45, and I think DeSantis was at 20-something. All right. These things don't occur in a vacuum, Dan, like I said before. The other states will react. They're not like on their own island, unaware of everything that's going on around them. Florida will see whether Donald Trump carried Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And it will go from being potentially competitive to a freaking blowout. Rudy Giuliani banked everything on Florida. He said, and by the way, Giuliani had a pretty strong lead. A lead that was about as big as the one we were just looking at for Donald Trump when Donald Trump started to really take control of the race. His early lead was about that size, even though other people were in the 20s, multiple other people, where Giuliani would be at like 33. Somebody else would be at like, Romney would be at like, 20-something. Huckabee would be at 20-something. McCain, right? And it was a crowded race, and everyone had a pretty significant vote share. That's the difference here. Even when Giuliani had his biggest leads, it was never like this. But Giuliani said, I'm, a Northeastern Republican. I cannot win the Iowa caucuses. He made a mistake Trump did not make. Trump competed in the Iowa caucuses, not heavily, but just enough to do really, really well. And it took a trick for Ted Cruz to pull off the win there. And it was a trick. And by the way, they better watch out for a similar trick because the same people who are running Ted Cruz's campaign, are running Ron DeSantis's. It is not beneath them to send out fake emails and fake calls saying Ben Carson has dropped out. It is not beneath them to send out fake stuff and say, for instance, Mike Pence has dropped out and he's encouraging everyone to vote for Ron DeSantis, to caucus for Ron DeSantis. That's what they did on behalf of Ted Cruz, for Ted Cruz, last time. But Rudy Giuliani made the mistake, Dan, and the momentum shifted away from him. He loses Iowa, so he starts to slip in support in New Hampshire. He doesn't do as well as he thought. In fact, it's a pretty bad result because you could slip like that. Underperformed in Iowa. Well, I'm not voting for this guy. And by the time you get to South Carolina, which is actually a kind of moderate, even though we're all the way down here, it's kind of a moderate electorate. You'd be surprised. It's an open primary, but it's basically just as moderate as New Hampshire. No kidding. And he didn't do well there. So by the time he got to Florida, his lead in Florida had evaporated completely. And John McCain won the Florida primary. This is what people who really don't do this for a living don't understand. So when you see their comments, you really got to take them with a grain. Like, is that really reality? Is that how it's going to go? It's not going to go like that. Things don't exist in a vacuum. Real quick, too, let's look at Wisconsin. A state Ted Cruz did, in fact, carry. But now Donald Trump is ahead in. It will be Tuesday, April 2nd, after Super Tuesday. 41 delegates, winner take most, open primary. 24 delegates are allocated to candidates based on the results of the 8 congressional districts, 3 per district. The candidate receiving the greatest number of votes in a district will receive 3 of that district's national delegates. 17 at-large delegates are to be bound to the candidate receiving the greatest number of votes statewide. Okay, so it's winner take most because you could certainly lose, a district and not get as many as your opponent in that district, but yet run it up in another region of the state. All right, so Cruz and Trump were actually less than 10 points. If I remember correctly, it was fairly close. So Cruz didn't get the delegate bump. He banked everything on Wisconsin, changing things, turning it around. And all he had really was a Pyrrhic victory. And we had to listen to the Cruz crew over and over on Twitter. And I'm over here just doing the math, telling John, what was his name? John from used to write for National Review. The names escape me. Telling him, no, actually, Trump can clinch the nomination just doing this. He doesn't need to get above a majority. He can do it. I'd like to see the delegate math on that. Okay. Here it is. If you're going to keep taking 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and then every winner take all, which he was favored in, and several states he turned into winner take all. South Carolina started with that. South Carolina, California basically was winner take all. So, let's see. Can I get rid of this? I can get rid of this now. Let's go next. More of these questions. Good question, Dan. And I think people really need to understand that this is not how this works. Since these territories don't vote in the overall presidential election, why do we allocate delegates to them for the primary? I know the delegate count isn't high, but it seems weird to give them a say of a candidate in an election they won't participate in. I'm 100% with you, Blake. 6 delegates. I'm a guy who doesn't even believe Washington, D.C. should have any Electoral College votes. I don't believe them. I don't believe they should. They're not real America. Washington, D.C. is not real America. They shouldn't vote. They shouldn't get a say. They shouldn't get a primary. By the way, D.C.'s primary, can I zoom in there and see? I should have zoomed. Man, I'm not even sure I can get it. I can't here. Do I not have it off to the side or somewhere? To look, I thought I popped it off to the side. I thought it was going to be over here somewhere. But yeah, I'm thinking it was over here, popped off. I guess not. Nope. That's some Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's kind of funny. It's winner take most. It's open. All 23 delegates are bound based on the results of the primary. Candidates must meet a 20% threshold of the total island-wide vote to qualify for delegates. If a candidate earns 50% or more, that candidate receives all 23 delegates on a winner-take-all basis. Again, I'm with you on this. I don't really understand this stuff. Guam, by the way, Guam's going for Trump. America Samoa's going for Trump. Northern Marianas are going for Trump. He won these all last time. In fact, Guam is like super Trumpy. I don't know how the hell that happened. I honestly don't know enough about it, but it's like some of those are really Yeah, really, really. But I get you. I'm with you, Blake. I really am. Any early thoughts on Senate races? This should be a good cycle for Republicans. Absolutely. Right now, we haven't put anything out yet, but right now, we got Republicans at about 51 seats. Bernie Moreno is going to beat Sherrod Brown pretty handily this time. Unless the Justice Department indicts Jim Justice, Joe Manchin is done. John Tester could survive. Absolutely, he could survive, without a doubt. He is very good at this. We've been here before. I already did him, Laura. I already did him. You must have been distracted by, but that's all right. I got it. Don't worry. She's reminding me. Let's see. What was I? Yeah. So, right now, Sherrod Brown skated because in 2018, Josh Mandel basically bounced on the race because his wife made him. I'm just serious. Then he went with Team Jeff Rowe and Cruise Crew against JD Vance and got hammered. Bernie Moreno was going to jump in 2022, but he did a very rare and selfless act. He does not have what Laura has repeatedly called Messiah syndrome. And he basically told the president, I think JD Vance is a better candidate. We should all just back him. I'm stepping aside. So you will notice that JD Vance immediately endorsed Bernie Moreno. And I would expect the Trump endorsement to come very, very soon for him. Or at least, Trump's got a lot on his plate. So we haven't seen these endorsements like we had in the past. Anyway, Rich can comment on Illinois opportunities for GOP growth, like DuPage County, for instance. There is opportunity there. Oh, I missed, but that's, Illinois is really, really complicated state. And right now we're going to do a Rhode Island voter analysis coming up next week. Delegate map was important to show at the polls, so I bumped it. But we had a couple requests for Rhode Island, and there was another one, but we can put Illinois on that. And I do think there is, but you have to have a Republican Party that really begins to make serious inroads with Hispanics and serious inroads with African Americans and working class, younger, non-white voters. And right now, the Republican Party is in an identity crisis. And half of them are cheerleading that Donald Trump, they're threatening to put Donald Trump in prison forever. And that's so far the only candidate who appeals to them. Premium user supporter, thanks. Did the DeSantis, and who is it? Kevin's Clips. Did the DeSantis deepfake with Fauci and Trump move his numbers? Yeah, if it did, they moved them in the wrong damn direction. I'm sure people know that's a deepfake at this point. This is what you might have noticed, that it does appear that the DeSantis campaign has told Christina Pushaw to shut the hell up, because she has taken a backseat. She was supposedly a couple of weeks ago unleashed. And nobody is hurting DeSantis more than his surrogates and his consultants and all these people that are surrounding. He's already terrible on the trail. He's very awkward. The Oklahoma thing was just cringeworthy. The rodeo. Hey, everybody. And they were just like, shut up. We're watching a rodeo. It was bad. But whoever made the decision to unleash her should be fired. And now they apparently pulled her back. That was among her many, many, many mistakes. Especially since she opened her candidate up to counterattacks about him with Fauci. And then how did that end? With the K file on CNN doing an investigative report that showed Ron DeSantis was still kissing Fauci's ass after Donald Trump turned on him. And when Andrew is up there rolling clip after clip with the date on it, and then Trump's team is going, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, it backfired. It totally backfired. To the point where a DeSantis supporter actually texted me the night that aired on CNN, everything about DeSantis' campaign is a lie. And that was it. Now she's a Trumper. Anyway, Rich can come. Oh, sorry, we did that already. But yeah, we will, from ideas, not money, from Getter, we will throw we will throw Illinois into the mix. All right. Without Dem voters, DeSoros is toast. And New York City guns, my boy. I know. I know. Listen, Glenn, buddy, they're not going to vote for him in huge numbers. They're not going to. And it's ironic. It's not just my own poll. So many of these other polls are like, oh, well, when it's open and any voter can vote in it, these Democrats are going to cross over and they're going to vote for DeSantis. No, most Democrats who are committed Democrats are going to go to their own primary if they even go, and they're going to vote for Joe Biden because he has the Democratic base behind him. The idea that a disaffected Democrat is going to cross over and vote for anybody but Donald Trump, or at least by more, margin, is freaking ludicrous. He's the only one with double-digit Democratic support in the general election against Joe Biden. And again, should we have, and you mean a concerted effort, Glenn. Like, these people think they're going to organically show up because they love him, Glenn. That's crazy. I could see a non-organic movement, and then he could benefit off of that. So I'm totally with you on that. But as far as some organic support for him, it's just crazy. In an area like California or some other semi-closed, where as long as you're a two-party voter and unaffiliated, you can kind of do your thing. Let's look at, for instance, previous Democrats. It's ugly, dude. They would need and I'm sure they are going to try to get that concerted effort because they got a ton of money, folks. So they can buy thousands of votes in a primary. They have the money to do it, So Trump is taking, in California, for instance, 46.2% of the Democratic vote. DeSantis is getting 7.7%. Even Tim Scott and Nikki Haley have more Democratic vote than Ron DeSantis. 15-15. And among independents, Trump is ahead by 51. Ron DeSantis only at 20. And why is that? Because non-white younger voters. Non-white younger voters. Non-white younger voters. Christ. Lord, forgive me. It's unbelievable. It's just, Glenn, it's driving me nuts. They just keep repeating things that aren't true. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Look at the numbers. What do you think again? Because they think, you know why they're saying that? Because Glenn's right. They plan on just buying all those Democratic votes that are willing to just bail on their primary and cross over. And actually, Sundance had a really good write-up on somebody had asked me to take a look at. And he was like, here's the establishment's plan. And he's 100% correct. If you look at the plans for the paid staffers in these early states alone, there's not that many folks to not organize something like an Operation Chaos like Rush Limbaugh used to talk about. What do you think of getting rid of the winner-take-all Electoral College? I don't like it at all. I like the Electoral College in its original design. I don't like getting rid of the winner-take-all. I don't like ranked choice voting. I don't care if you win the state with 40% and there's like a 15% third party, like what happened to Herbert Walker Bush with Ross Perot. Herbert Walker Bush lost the election, period, end of story. And notice all these moderates like the Bushies support this shit. I can't imagine why. Ranked choice voting. It's the only way they can survive a primary. Lisa Murkowski, who, by the way, just endorsed Tim Scott. Lisa Murkowski literally sacrificed her own state and their economy because they're a primary fossil fuel economy. She just sacrificed her own state. It will be represented by a Democratic senator in the future. That's going to happen. For herself. For her own ambitions. So her corrupt ass could stay in the Senate. for K Street, rent seekers, and interest groups. Two in the same. Given what the GOP is trying to do to Trump in California, does Trump need every vote he can, or can one vote for RFK without worry? No, he needs every vote he can. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not trying to cheerlead for him, but I'm just telling you, Biden has the Democratic base locked up. So if you're doing this based on what are the odds, that your vote, you want to give your vote to the person with the best chance of winning, then you should vote for Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I like RFK as a perfect person, and I like several things he has to say about the deep state and other things, but California is actually one of the worst places for him to. He's got some moderate and independent support. All the support he's built so far is non-democratic. The primary will still be dominated by Democrats, and Joe Biden is currently winning. I can actually look that up for you right now. What did he do? The Democratic primary after the Republicans? Does look like he did. He did. Joe Biden is winning the Democratic vote 73-16. He's also winning the independent 69-20. So, it's 72-17. Shit, the guy's here, Laura. Please tell that kid not to scalp. Can you do that for me, or you're not willing to do that? Please don't scalp my...
I am upstairs with a 3-year-old.
Man, he's going to scalp me again, babe. Every time. Listen, I'll just tell you guys real quick, and I'll make up the time. Don't worry. I got Bermuda. It's in the growing season. I have Tifway 419. And this grows like crazy. And I use a reel mower, which I love because it's turf grass. And I don't have time to mow it 2-3 times a week. I just don't. So I finally got this guy to come, and he does a great job. But his weed whacker dude, weed whacks at the dirt, around the mailbox. Just the other day, the last week, there was right in the middle. I don't know what he was trying to weed whack. There was a weed whacker circle to the ground in the middle.
Special.
I'm like, what are you doing, kid? What are you doing? Now, thank God people who know lawns know what I'm talking about. But the Bermuda grows back pretty quickly. But it's I never get it perfect, guys, because he's always got some whacker scalp. And it's driving me a little bit nuts. So I wanted to catch him this next time and tell him, hey, kid. Just weed whack around the fence and the brick and other stuff. Don't weed whack shit you don't need to weed whack. All right? And I use an edger for the edge of the grass. Don't blast the edge of the grass by the concrete into an oblivion until it doesn't exist anymore and it's dirt. Matter of fact, don't touch it at all. I'll edge it myself. My lawn is very important. I don't get to fish not anymore, but I don't get to fish as often as I'd like. So this is my therapy, killing me. That and barbecuing, but Laura and I have some issues getting our barbecuing game out this year. Yeah, so I'm just being honest with you, Siler. I would just, if it was me, and that's your concern, I would vote in the Republican primary because he is going to, and I'm going to tell you why. Because McClintock, Kevin Kiley, all these people have begged him for an endorsement. Kevin McCarthy begged him to leave David Valadao alone, right? Begged him to leave, what's her name? Kim alone against people who had primary candidates. John Duarte, who, by the way, now the local radio stations can't stand his guts. They're all begging David Giglio to run because now they're like, damn, we got fooled. Guy's a scam artist. Now he's pushing amnesty. He doesn't want amnesty. He wants cheap labor. He wants slave labor. They're all going to screw Donald Trump because I know the plan. I know I have spies everywhere. Tom McClintock already screwed him. Already betrayed him. Even though he was like, please, and give me the endorsement before Nathan Magzik beats me. And by the way, I thought it was the right thing to do because, frankly, I thought it was kind of scummy to primary Tom McClintock, who had a great voting record until this Congress, had a great voting record for his party, for his area, right after his wife died. They're married twice as long as Laura and I, and we've been together a long time. 18 years in August. Almost double the time McClintock and his wife were married.
Don't worry, I don't have to correct you. I saw you get a little nervous.
And it was, but I'm right. I know I'm right. And it was just in bad form. The man just put his wife in the ground. And you got Twitter teams set up calling him a rat and a snake and this. Honestly, there was no vote to really support that. I mean, he didn't have a horrible voting record, even though, sure, he was, quite frankly, he's been a pain in Kevin and Paul Ryan's ass for years until now. And they're all voting for DeSantis. And a donor, I know, I don't want to give away the industry because that'll make it easier for them to figure it out. But he wasn't even a Republican donor. Frankie really couldn't stand Republicans. And he donated to both just because that's the industry. And in his particular district, you just couldn't beat the one guy until they reallocated. Anyway, it goes up to a bunch of them to include Tom McClintock. And he's like, we're going to pull it together and nominate Trump, get him back in there and clean this crap up. It's totally out of control. And they were like, no, we're not. We're done with Trump. Screw Trump. And he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not giving you shit. And then he picked up the phone and called everybody, including me. So, wondering if Rich and Barnes are targeting the RINOs like Nancy Mace that voted against censorship with America First candidates. We need a targeted list. We did this a little bit already. I mean, I'm like uncomfortable with that at this point because then I will never be able to poll certain races. I'm going to box myself out of certain races. You know, it's like John Bolton's fake PAC polls, you know, and Never Back Down's fake polls. Like, I'm a PAC supporting Ron DeSantis, but not associated with Ron DeSantis. And this wasn't funded by Ron DeSantis, but here's my fake poll, you know? And I just feel like I would be opening myself up to that. So I really wish I have no problem helping people do that. But there are other things where I could use my time, you know, that would help out more. And I'm trying to do that now. So yeah, stay tuned. But yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean. I mean, I'll always tell you, you know, who is and who isn't. My choice to run against Nancy Mace was not who they got to run against Nancy Mace in 2022. In fact, he was on War Room this morning. His name is Paul Dans, and I thought he would do a much better job. And he's not scary. He wouldn't have scared Charleston, right? And that's ultimately how Nancy Mace was able to hold on. It was a big margin in Charleston. So, you know, I mean, I'll think about it more. All right, I will. I understand what you're saying. I hear you loud and clear. I'll think about it more. What are your thoughts on Congress RINOs voting for... Oh, we did that already. There's the Quinnipiac one. I guess I did that. What does Ohio 10 do at Mike Turner? Find a challenger. That's what you do. You find a challenger. Because Ohio, places like that, this is going to be the new base, the real base of the Republican Party. It is unacceptable. And according to Kevin McCarthy, as part of his deal, which I don't believe he's going to uphold, but as part of his deal, he would not be able to interfere in that primary. Same thing with, like, say, Mississippi 3, right? Where we had Mike Cassidy on, and he was going against that friggin' dirtbag, man. What a scumbag. What a scumbag. And forces him to a runoff and, in fact, gets more votes. Kevin McCarthy races in to the rescue. $1 million to trash Mike Cassidy in a safe Republican district. You got to primary him, guys. Ohio shouldn't have a single RINO in it. That's the truth. Every friggin' district is 100% MAGA. They don't even like Republicans. This is the thing that I got to be honest. I mean, I can't believe. I got to say this. Republicans forgot what losers they were until Donald Trump came. Where's my buddy Glenn on this? Glenn knows what I'm talking about. He feels me. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. This was a party of losers. Loser in Ohio in 2008. Loser in Ohio in 2012. Would have been a loser in Ohio and Iowa, a whole lot of them, in 16 and again in 20 if it was anyone else but. Could you see Ted Cruz winning the state of Ohio, folks? Are you freaking kidding me? Is this a joke? Come on. Come on. We go right back to being a razor thin, 2.5 points either way. Iowa showed you in 18. It'll go right back to the left if you piss it off. Why don't I think Gretchen Whitmer gets talked about more as a replacement for Joe Biden? She makes more sense. Of course, we are talking about the governor of Michigan over here. Friends, that's why. Friends. Why do RINOs continue to win primaries when they're so and because she hasn't made the moves that Newsom has made. Like, Newsom is positioning himself to be, because everybody knows Kamala Harris is deeply, deeply disliked. Nobody likes Kamala Harris. Even Ron DeSantis would be Kamala Harris. So Gavin Newsom is positioning himself to be, if something happens to Biden, if he drops dead, which is a possibility. And I should not have said that out loud. I believe words are power, and I should not have said that out loud. But if something happens to Joe Biden, legally or health-wise, yeah, and Laura will tell you, I believe in the power of words 100%. I once said something when we were teenagers to somebody, and 30 minutes later it happened, and I thought my grandmother and her warning about Italians having the power to give the evil eye. I never forgave myself for that. Do you remember that, Laura? Stupid kid. Stupid thing.
Stop blaming yourself for that. I already told you you were a dumb kid. You didn't.
All because she wrote a bad progress report and I wasn't going to be able to hang out with you. That's all that was about. I was pissed off.
Now use me as the scapegoat.
No, it's my fault. It's my fault totally. It has nothing to do with you. It's just that I had plans for the weekend. And then she writes this bad progress report for my father. And I'm like, you know what? I hope you, right? And then this poor woman drives home. There's a freak snowstorm. She hits black ice. Next thing you know, the flag's at half mast. I'm like, oh my God. I will never forgive myself.
You were very tore up about it too. So just note to the audience, he was beyond himself.
Stupid kid making a stupid ass comment. Words have consequences. Words have power. I'm telling you. Stupid. I'm going to pay for that. During my life review, I know Jesus is hitting me with that, Laura. I know he is. There's a couple of things I'm worried about, and that's one of them.
I think Jesus will take into account that you were a stupid teenager and you made a bad choice.
I hope so. That's a horrible thing to say, you know? Anyway, why do RINOs continue to win primaries when they're so strongly hated? House elections are every 2 years. The GOP voter has hated the establishment for 16. Yeah, that's a great question. It comes down to money. It comes down to support. Ultimately, that's up to the base. That's up to you guys. You know, even though Granger is so hated in Texas 12, there are a lot of donors who are afraid to support anyone who goes against her. You know, money matters, and that's a shame in our political system, but it's true. And that's why, to the base, Donald Trump has been such a blessing, because you could use his endorsement. Now, listen, you better earn it in campaign. And I bitched at a lot of people that I just did not feel they were worthy of his endorsement. They got it and then sat on their ass and bothered me. But it is an opportunity. That's a grind. You hear that? That's a scalp. It was an opportunity to do something that you would not be able to do given any other circumstances. So unfortunately, it's hard for candidates to get attention. It's hard for them to catch fire. It's hard for them to get a burst of low-dollar donations, and that the way the system is, if you don't post a good quarter, you're not taken as serious. So at the end of the day, it's really, really difficult, you know? Oh, and I have seen some of Joe Rogan's podcast about with RFK. I have. I've been looking forward to his one with Trump. I'd be more interested in that. But I did look at some of it. Somebody sent me a couple of minute clip about, I'd like to go and check out the whole thing. I just haven't had time. But about, him saying, you think that the government killed your father and your uncle. So what would you, or had a role in it? What would you be doing about this? This is something you're conscious of. And he said, I take precautions. I'm very conscious of this. It's something I think about a lot. It was interesting. How much of RFK's voters can DJT sway in 24? Now, remember, we're only talking about in California, for instance, 18% of the vote? Nationwide, and in most of the areas where we've polled, like a third to 40% of RFK's voters would vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. It's a massive amount of synergy. And I actually think that RFK is in a really bad position. He's got to somehow try to win over and keep those votes because he needs those votes without being a Trump hater. As the Bernie ran into this paradox. Without being a Trump hater, you can't get enough Democrat votes. So it's just a really bad place for the Democratic Party at this point. It's a bad place, maybe not politically, successfully, because, they're doing all right, but it's a bad thing if you care at all about things like critical thinking and free thought and independent thought and independent identity. They just don't believe in that anymore. They're a hive mind. And if you are not a part of the hive, not only are you ostracized, but you're targeted for destruction. So that would be a vote, Santos Rex, that any other eventual Republican nominee would largely end up losing. They would not vote. They would either not vote, they'd either stay home, or they'll vote for any legitimate third-party candidate that's on their ballot. If Washington, D.C. went back to its original boundaries, would Virginia be a red state? At this point, no. Not a red state, certainly be more competitive, but no, there's just too many suburbs now that are extending beyond Loudoun County, and Nova's gotten a lot bigger than it was even in 2012. Wood stopped listening, or Garrett A says, Rich Wood stopped listening to Clay and Bucks because of their election takes being so vanilla and stupid. Does it seem they're backing off RDS? They're not going to kill their radio career for Ron DeSantis. I don't think so. Now, if they do, first of all, frankly, can I just say bluntly, I think there's no other way to say it. I have to be blunt about it. I think if Rush Limbaugh was still alive, he'd be disgusted by the shilling they have done for Ron DeSantis. I do. And I think he'd be disgusted by any one of them showing up at a fundraiser the way they did. The donor fundraiser at the Four Seasons. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So I think they feel now they've shown their ass a little bit. They know their ratings, and they have to pull back somehow, or they have to go after Mike Pence to make themselves look more fair. Somebody's got to get their head on the chopping block. Question for Rich Part 2. How long will this opportunity last before RINO incompetence and political elites in institutional power allowing resistance to voters pushing for change in the party? Because that will cause that door to close. And when will we know it has closed? That's a great question. I think we'll know this election, Owen. I think we'll probably know before this election through the polling. I think I'm going to see it. Depending on who is nominated, how this all shakes up. Listen, barring any monumental event or the fact that they just straight remove him from the ballot, Donald Trump will be the nominee. And then if they fight him and sabotage him, they're going to hate Republicans forever, for a generation. If they fight him and sabotage him and take him off the ballot, they're gone forever. 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 It was somebody did. Red Diver, Red State something, I don't know. He does videos once in a while, and I know because somebody sent them to me. He said the other day on Twitter, this is very simple. There were 2.1 million Romney Clinton voters. There was 8+ million Obama Trump voters. And the argument Team DeSantis is making is to forsake the over 8 million to get the 2 million back. It's stupid. It's simple math. And I responded and said, it's actually even worse, Owen, because you're forsaking all of these other newer voters. You're forsaking the 10% now who tell us routinely now. They voted for Joe Biden, but they would vote for Donald Trump now. By the way, the reverse is less than 2%. So you're looking at a net swing of another 8 million. So you have those voters that are just Trump voters and voted for Obama, could in fact vote Democrat if Trump's not the face of the Republican Party. Then you have this other 8 million roughly net shift. And then you have the newer people that are like Trump only. I mean, Owen, this makes no math. In no world does this make mathematical sense. In no world. And its only argument is filled with like platitudes and cliches and nonsense. Just stupid talking points that aren't how people like me actually do this job. Should Tennessee do the same? Okay, I understand. Find a challenge to the establishment in Tennessee. Yeah, I mean, that should be going on everywhere. Would it be a smart move for Carrie Lake to run for Senate in 2024? You know, I don't want to give up. And do I think Blake Masters will run again for Senate? Not if Carrie runs. No. I got to tell you, is it a smart move for Carrie Lake? I can tell you she appears to be the strongest candidate. Mark Lamb is not the strongest candidate. The NRSC has done polling. They have not released. I have seen it. There's been private polling done on the behalf of Republicans in Arizona to see who's the strongest. It was Carrie by far. Carrie has the highest favorability rating among Republicans outside of Donald Trump. So it's tough. It's up to her. You know, only Carrie, I don't want to say that. And I don't want to say anything like that because honestly, she might be listening. And I don't want to give her any advice. She's a grown woman. Carrie Lake knows what's best for her. But I do think she can win, especially with the current environment. I do think she can win. When can we expect the next post-indictment Trump v. Biden poll? And I saw the Quinnipiac poll. Yep. And I'm curious to see if movement toward the big guy. You know, I think that's Quinnipiac for you. I just don't buy it. But I can't wait to do it myself, DJ. The answer to that is simple. Share the public polling project far and wide and support it if you can. Because we have done 2 without meeting the threshold of the first one. And I'll even pull it up right now. I don't even know where we're at, frankly. Whoops. Let's see where we're at. And then I guess we'll wrap it up because that is the end of that. If you go to bigdatapoll.com/public-polling-project, links in the description to every one of the videos. We are at, and I'll just show you this right now. And I've tried always to keep the cost way low. Other pollsters call me and are like, how do you only set that at $8,000? Especially because you're mixed mode. And the answer is I'm okay with spending some of the YouTube membership fees and the local supporter fees on the poll and sharing in the cost of the poll. I'm all right with doing that. But this is a poll that was for, it was post-Labor Day or something. No, post-midterm. So it was like, I don't even know. We've done 3 polls before this one was even funded. So we're at 35%, roughly just under 35%. And we haven't fully funded it. So I'm trying, but Laura will kill me if I keep, right? Because we did Florida, we did Texas.
I will kick your butt.
And we did multiple nationals. Yeah, I mean, guys, it's a lot of money, so I'm hoping very, very soon. So DJ, if you could share it, if all of you watching can share it. Listen, you know how big the viewership is getting on this show? If like everyone gave $1, the poll would be funded every week. If you gave $1 every week, the polling would be funded every week. We could literally poll weekly. I'm serious. There's like 5 to 10,000 viewers on Getter, 5 to 10,000 viewers on Rumble, couple thousand viewers on YouTube, couple thousand viewers on Twitter. What am I missing? I mean, and then on locals, that's, a smaller audience, but that's because locals community watching it. If everybody just gave $1, the poll would be funded every week. We could literally be like Morning Consult and poll every week.
That would be so cool.
Hell yeah, it would be cool. And I'm reluctant to take any big guy's money, like you just said, the big guy. I have had people, and Red Eagle Politics. Thank you. That's what it was. I have had people say, hey, how about $250,000 for the year? Would that cover it? But believe me, that's not going to come for free. And I don't want that. I like our arrangement right now. I just wish it would be more consistent, But yeah, so share it far and wide. It's right there. And let me boot you, Laura. Sorry about that. Whoops, I already pulled you up there. Norm, there you go. Oh, don't give to YouTube, Norm. Don't give to YouTube. They take 30%. And listen, I appreciate all the super chats, but I should have said that. Rumble is better as far as how much they take from you, but give directly to the donation form. It takes everything. You could do it through a card. I think you can even do, I don't know if you can do ACH on small amounts. I don't know. But you can do basically, they're going to add Venmo soon too. So, yeah, there's that. They're going to add Venmo. They were supposed to add crypto a while ago and then didn't happen. And I was trying to make that, Rich. Yeah, man. Yeah, join locals. That's always a big help, And speaking of which, it's 2:23. I guess I do have to wrap it up here. But yeah, join locals, big help. Oh, God, Jay, thank you so much for saying that. At the end of the month, if you're grandfathered in, can we get rid of Jay's comment for a second? At the end of the month, we will be moving. Like, I think, Scott Adams is moved their fee twice. Barnes and Viva did twice. They have a lot more content and stuff, but the content we provide is expensive content, expensive. I mean, not just the stuff we're putting into the show, and I can't wait till we get it all done. We're making progress, even though it doesn't look like we are. We just have kids, so it's going slower than we'd like, but we are making progress. Instead of painting the way we were going to paint something cool, instead we're just going to do it in
I already told Jay that I have soundproof pieces, right? This is really cool. This is the fun part.
It is.
I have soundproof pieces, right? And I'm going to make them into a map, right? So, and they're you want to show them one of the hexagons? Oh, is that where you're going?
Yeah, sure is.
So it will also absorb the sound, so there won't be,
White.
And so the map is going to be the white hexagon pieces, and then the black is going to be the border of it. Yep.
Ooh,
right. And then I'm getting
when we zoom out,
and then I'm getting a sign made of the logo, and then I'm going to put it in the center of the map.
It's going to be cool.
And it's going to, I don't know if I should get it lit up, because I'm wondering if it's going to reflect badly on camera.
Yeah, the neon you're talking about.
I don't know if we should do it neon or just
Benny said his looks fine, and I looked at it, and Benny was like, "You just got to put it back. You got to put it back away, so zoom back a little bit." And that we're going to do that anyway. We're going to have a wider shot, So
yeah.
he's like, look what I did. I put it like back in the corner because his angle, the room is actually like he's sitting in front of the corner. He's catty cornered in the room, so he's in the back corner. Yeah, so you can still see it because it's super bright. But so we want to.
Because that's the only thing I was worried about with the fluorescent lighting. If when our viewers are watching, and then all of a sudden you have this blare, because I have a sensitive eyes and I get migraines very easily, so I didn't want anybody to have a migraine staring at Rich.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could get it, but yeah, let me tell you about locals real quick. Anyone who's already in it will be grandfathered in, so you don't have to worry about it for a bit. And also, if you're on YouTube and you want to join locals, I'll give the code again, but it's in the community under members only, where you can actually see the what's it called? The code that gets you like 2 months off. So it like offsets some of your costs. But we will be eventually upping it. It's not going to be a huge jump. But if you're signed up already as a supporter, then you're going to be grandfathered in. But if you're a member and you're thinking about join before the end of June, because come July is when that's going to take effect. All right. So I should put a post on locals for that. Hey, members, join, subscribe now, because now's the last chance to get it before it up. And I'm talking about from like 5 to 7, folks. I'm not talking. And I know we haven't gotten done talking to locals about what they think yet. But, the truth is there's a lot of communities that are a lot more. And we resisted doing that. And in order to grow, we're going to have to, and also it's just the content. Like I said, quite a bit. And I like it. I like the deep content stuff. I don't mind going over the news clips, folks, here and there. Like that's the good filler stuff. But that's not what we do here. We do polling, we do data, we do maps, we do graphics, and that stuff is time and money, so, and I like sourcing it with my own data. I don't like other people's data. I don't like it at all unless I have to. I just don't trust anybody anymore, or very few, very, very few. So, join while you can. All right. And what else? Jack Posobiec. Oh my God, you missed it already. Go to Human Events after we get off and rewind. I hung out with Jack a little bit, and that'll be clipped and showed today, right now, as we speak. All right. So with that in mind, I'm out. Have a safe weekend. I want to play something for you on the way out. I got to give the guy credit. Hang tight 1 second. I'm going to mute my mic so I don't give it away.
I love how he's like so sneaky. I'm going to tell him.
No, Laura. No, Laura. Oh, okay, good. So let me stop this screen share. Again, share the public polling project far and wide. Contribute if you can. All right, here we go. So, one damn day. And you may have seen this.
Wait. Book club.
Oh, book club. We're not having. It's Father's Day this weekend.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, book club, no book club. Even if I'm going to just chill out, but I wouldn't even mind doing it, but I'm taking away from other dads and I'm going to wait. So we'll pick book club up next Sunday. All right. So I've been thinking since this Trump indictment came out, how many people have obviously forgotten, or how many people, one, don't see the irony that they manipulated the law in an effort to charge Trump with something that Hillary Clinton was supposed to be charged with. And at the end of the day, we remember non-prosecutor Jim Comey coming to the microphone and saying, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case, right? And nobody, a very few people, have noticed it or remembered it, haven't seen the irony in it. And this guy, I tried to hire him. I remember I thought this video was so great. I tried to hire him. Jimmy Dore, but I had this set up to play in the beginning of the show yesterday. Jimmy Dore goes on his show yesterday and plays the damn video. All right, so this is from Socialist Mop. Instead of playing my normal music, I'm going to ride him out of here. All right, just to remind everyone how bad the double standard is in this country, or how unserious these people are. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to say goodbye. All the best, folks. Have a safe weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. You got anything to say, Laura, before I hit it?
As usual, deuces, and see you on the flip side.
See you on the flip side, guys. Enjoy this from Socialist Mop. I wish he had time to create more. He's fantastic at it.
Good morning. I'm here to give you an update on the FBI's investigation of Secretary Clinton. What I want to do is tell you what we're recommending. But first, let me tell you what we found. 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it make?
8 of those chains are top secret, 36 of those chains secret, and 8 contain confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
Everything I did was admitted. There was no law, no regulation.
Secretary Clinton should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, not even Gmail.
Well, first of all, nothing was marked classified.
To the contrary,
Nothing was marked classified.
there is evidence, a
Nothing was
tremendous
marked,
amount, a
nothing was
tremendous
marked
amount.
classified.
Now let me tell you what we found.
Oh my God.
110 emails.
It was not the best choice.
52 email chains
It was a mistake.
have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it
8
make?
of those chains are top
It wasn't
secret,
the best choice.
36 of those chains
I said
secret,
it was a mistake.
and 8 contain confidential information.
What difference at this point does it
With
make?
respect to our recommendation, this is going to be an unusual statement in at least a couple of ways. Although there is evidence, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. What difference at this point does it make? 110 emails.
It wasn't the best choice.
52 email chains
I made a mistake.
have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it
8
make?
of those chains are
It
top
was not a
secret,
good choice.
36 of those chains
I said it was
secret,
a mistake.
and 8 contain confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
What a scumbag. What a scumbag,
That
right?
was epic, though.
Right, it was. All the best, guys. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Daddy's Day. Whoop, whoop. God bless y'all.